Welcome to Greentime. I'm host Don Fitz. This episode is going to be about climate change and the Kingsnorth Six. We're going to take a break and then come back and talk about just what is so important about what happened in England. Welcome back to Greentime. This episode we're talking about climate crisis in the Kingsnorth Six. I have with me someone who's worked on climate issues for years, Tom Braford. Tom, you are with St. Louis 350 Collaboration.
That's correct.
A group trying to get the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere down to 350 parts of carbon dioxide.
Right. We're at 392 parts right now, and gaining a couple parts per million every year, so we need to reverse that. We need to go in the opposite direction. Yeah. Now, the movie that we're going to see about the Kingsnorth Six were some people in England who wanted to do that. Why was carbon dioxide, what did they do? What got them aroused? Well, the issue there was that the government had committed to take some action towards starting to cut carbon emissions, not enough by most scientists.
But the British government said they were going to do something. Okay.
Right, and then they turned around and were authorizing the building of some huge new coal-fired power plants, which of course is the major source of CO2 pollution in the atmosphere right now.
So a lot of environmentalists in England were basically outraged because they heard the government making a commitment, and then the government turned around and did the opposite of what that commitment was.
Well, the environmentalists were, but the problem was that this was going to happen. There really wasn't time to do a big public awareness campaign, so something dramatic had to be done to have this be in people's consciousness.
And they basically were willing to risk going to jail by the action that they took of climbing inside these towers and then going out to hang a banner.
Right. The British have a long tradition of, just like we do in this country, of taking direct action when something as critical as crashing our planet and ruining civilization is at stake.
And this is basically what the issue is with climate change.
Yeah, it really is. It really comes down to that.
Can you just, in a couple of minutes, could you tell me what are the major concerns when we continue to burn coal and the planet continues to heat up? Well,
Dr. James Hansen, who you'll see briefly in this film, he was the star witness at the trial after this action, has said that if we insist on burning every last lump of coal and every last drop of oil, we will boil our oceans, lose our atmosphere, and turn Earth into a hot, lifeless planet like Venus. And I've read his book, Storms of Our Grandchildren, and he lays out the science for that. We've never had as much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere in the paleo history of the world as we will end up having if we insist on burning all of the fossil fuels.
Right, and one of the things that I've read about previous warming periods is they took hundreds of thousands of years for the planet to warm a little bit.
Right.
But what's happening now is that the rate, and plants and animals could evolve to change over hundreds of thousands of years. But if it's done in 50 years or a century, there's no possible way that species can evolve for that to happen.
Right. I mean, we had just look here in St. Louis. I mean, last July we had a week of 104-degree days, and now we're experiencing it again in 2011.
And both 2010 and 2011. Thanks, Tom. I'm getting the wrap-up sign, and I want to tell everybody to stay tuned because we're going to see the movie A Time Comes, the story of the Kingsnorth North. After that, we're going to see another announcement, and be sure to tune in the future to more
you come from an activist background?
No, my parents are quite the opposite. They thought hippies were, you know, a bunch of no-gooders, and, you know, Greenpeace was just a load of tree huggers and yogurt weavers.
Was this the first illegal thing you'd done?
My mum instilled in me a great sense of belief that we could try and fix things. And I think just seeing photos and watching what people were doing made me believe that I could be an activist as well.
Throughout history, people have taken direct action, and when they've done it, they've been lambasted and lampooned by people, but subsequently, when you look back, you realise that perhaps they were right to do what they did.
Getting into the chimney was fine. We walked through a giant roller door and shut it and turned the electrics off. So once we were in, we were pretty much locked in.
The one memory I've really got is getting in there, and we'd expected a staircase. It was about the height of Canary Wharf, and we had, you know, 50 kilograms of kit.
Had rope, water, paint, all of our supplies.
Oh, the paint on the side of the chimney?
Yeah, yeah.
So what went through your head when you realised that there wasn't a circular staircase going up?
I said a lot of naughty words. When we originally communicated it to the coordinator, he was questioning whether we'd still be able to achieve it. So we said we would, but it's going to take a lot longer. And it did.
It took 9 hours. And it was so hot, because at that point they hadn't shut it down, so you still have this CO2 going up at 120 degrees Celsius.
The ladder with the back scratcher on went up in about 40, 50 metre intervals.
So then you had to haul it all up?
Yeah.
Which you didn't think you were gonna have to do?
No.
No.
I was based at the base of the chimney in a van. I had a campaigner with me and a press officer, and that's where the hub was for us for the day.
Well, it's kind of like doing a military campaign, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yes.
All right, if we move over to the conveyor belts, we've got 2, I think, there. I've got a few of them in there.
We had a diversionary team. They went to the front gate. They were holding banners and placards. That allowed other teams to access the site. We had people going onto the conveyor belts. Again, a filthy, disgusting, dirty place. It's just full of coal dust.
And you've got some like amazing footage, which was actually police footage that they shot from their helicopters. I mean, it was incredible that you were able to access that.
Someone somewhere's got a bit of kit, and you know, that's used from time to time. Yes.
Everyone was, you know, waiting for us to get to the top, so we weren't sort of mucking around. We knew we had to get up there. Kevin and Hugh rigged up a hauling system. Incredibly arduous, and it took a lot of mental focus, I'd say.
Will said it was the closest thing to a man giving birth.
He did. I don't know if I'd agree with him.
You're hauling these bags, and you look down, and the bag hadn't moved at all. It was just swaying there, and like the pain in your legs, because we were using our harnesses to pull up the bags, because it was just too much on our arms, especially after climbing up the ladder. So we were clipped in, and so we're running back. So like that pain on your legs, and then when this bag came out, it was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And then you'd have to do another 6.
Just going up each kind of level, each step was just knackering, and just thinking, when is this going to end?
As we got closer to the top of the chimney, the dust got so much worse, and it's like, you know, carcinogenic, at least 4 inches in some levels.
We lost our mask bag on the way up.
So when you're running and trying to haul up the bags, you're kicking up all this dust.
Yeah.
Your face is completely black. You know, it's all in your mouth and your tongue and your teeth.
And I do remember the sense of satisfaction coming out the top. was just kind of pure soaring joy, like kind of endorphins exploding in the brain, like a firework of adrenaline. It was just insane.
We got to the top at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the best bit was that when we came out of the little door, we could see all the people that had locked off the conveyor belts. So we could, for the first time, wave at each other and know that each other were safe, and that was a really brilliant feeling.
We've got a few people on the chimney playing hide and seek with us as we go around. I can see 2 at the moment, but we'll get the camera on it as we come round. Go up. There we go. Oh, get it out of focus. Stocky build, yellow hat, unshaven, obviously on a mobile phone to somebody.
Because my parents live near there, I gave them a ring and said, you might see on the news I'm on the top of this power station. So, you know, they picked up and said, we know, we've seen it. Good
afternoon. Environmental campaigners have broken into a Kent power station and are threatening to shut it down.
I was like, sorry.
Is this the first they'd heard about it?
Yeah.
They say they're determined to prevent a new coal-fired power station being built. It will be the first to be built in the country for 20 years.
Yeah, another one's come out, so he's got a white climbing helmet.
He's taking photographs of the other one with us in the background, isn't he? Yeah. I just saw some flashes.
And then I got up and did the interviews with the media and tried to justify it to the public when we were up there. And of course, this kind of thing is always a bit controversial. You get lots of public ringing into the talk radio stations saying that we're nutters.
I believe we can now talk live to Ben Stewart, who is one of the protesters who is still up there. Ben, we can see you up there at the moment, but people across our region watching this, they're angry that you're trying to make this sort of protest, which actually won't get you anywhere, will it?
Look, the fact is that non-violent direct action throughout the decades has actually got results. Unfortunately, we have a situation in Britain where our government simply isn't listening to reason. I'm standing right now on top of a chimney that belches out 20,000 tonnes of CO2 every day. Now, that's a shame on our nation, but what's a real shame is that Gordon Brown wants to build a new one of those carbon dinosaurs, and that's why we're up here. We're trying to stop that happening.
It took Kev and Hugh quite a long time to rig up all the ropes. We were mixing the paint and getting our kits ready for Kevin and I to go over.
She hadn't been climbing long. There's not a lot of people that could just hop over the side like that. And I've got bigger respect for her.
How big is that chimney?
It's either 209 or 220 metres.
When you get to that height, your brain can't quite compute that sort of distance. You know, I've never been, you know, on an edge that high before. I was clipped on and just kind of holding the camera over the edge like that. Through the day, there was a lot of comments on the website, on the blog. Obviously, a lot of people weren't exactly behind what we were doing. I wired the pictures from the top of the chimney, and then they got back to the picture desk. And then the moment the picture of Emily going over the side went up, it completely changed people's attitudes.
I felt slightly nervous and afraid, but I also felt like this is something that I'd been wanting to do for a very long time. So I felt quite honoured.
It's the highest thing I've abseiling off of. Something that really holds your attention. There is a great feeling of vulnerability out there.
once I went over the side, it was not very nice at all. It was starting to get dark and felt a bit lonely and exposed.
And why did you feel it was necessary to do that action?
It emits 9 million tonnes of carbon dioxide a year. And the fact that E.ON are trying to build a second one on the site is just completely outrageous.
That's the top of one letter. I can't really see it, but I think things are developing. It may well be a banner.
How did you work out how to paint the letters? Because they're very symmetrically organised.
Well, I've done some letter painting before on structures.
We can go back to Richard Smith, who's there live. Richard, what's the latest there?
We believe that the letter G has now appeared on the side of the power station, written in a large letter in white paint.
What did you sort of say to each other?
I swore a lot, and Kev whistled and told me that everything was fine.
I'm a little dyslexic, so my biggest fear wasn't forming letters. I knew I'd be okay with that. I was just thinking if I was really tired, I might have made some really basic fundamental spelling mistakes.
I was in a lot of pain physically and emotionally and mentally. It was quite distressing.
I just remember giving her a huge cuddle when she got to the top. It was just like, my God, how on earth did you manage that?
Didn't you have a great meal up there?
Yeah, it was fantastic. I think definitely up there in the top 3 best meals that I've ever had in my life. I mean, it was just pasta and salad, but it was just absolutely amazing.
It was amazing.
It was.
And I think
fantastic.
that's one of the things that enabled me to get back to the top. I just kept repeating to myself, pasta, pasta. And I was going to Paris the next weekend, so I kept saying my mantra was pasta, Paris, pasta, Paris, pasta, Paris.
When are you coming down briefly? Are you staying the night up there?
We've got supplies, and someone's brewing a cup of tea at the moment, so I think we're probably going to stay the night.
And I think I was just having really mundane, normal dreams. I think I was dreaming about, you know, just eating a cheese sandwich or something like that. And then, you know, woke up and looked down and was like, oh my God, I'm up a chimney, you know.
Cheese sandwiches.
We didn't get to complete the slogan. The complete slogan would have been Gordon, bin it. When we finished the ad on Gordon, we were informed that there'd been a High Court injunction had been served on us and we had to cease our activities.
I've got a huge respect for the police, and when we came down, they were incredibly friendly and really nice and looked after us.
I think the key thing about direct action from our point of view is that it's always peaceful, it's always non-violent, and you never run away. When the police come and they arrest us, we always stand our ground and we always defend our actions, and we defend our actions in a court of law, sometimes in front of a jury.
6 Greenpeace activists are on trial in front of a jury at Maidstone Crown Court for causing £30,000 worth of damage to the Kingsnorth power station, where they painted Gordon on its chimney.
There was a very real danger, according to our lawyers, that we would go to jail.
I mean, you can see how I look here. I wouldn't last 5 minutes in jail, so I'd be absolutely terrified in there. But, you know, it's something I'd be prepared to go to jail for.
Now, they argued their actions were justified because they were trying to highlight the dangers of climate change.
There was a lawful excuse that the harm we caused by the damage of painting was insignificant compared with the emissions from Kingsnorth for that one day alone.
And the moments when the jury became most engaged was when the witnesses, the defendants or the scientific witnesses, were talking about the effects of climate change on our kids and on our grandchildren. And suddenly I think it put our actions into a different context and made them look, quite frankly, proportionate and reasonable.
Today they called one of the world's leading climate change scientists to give evidence.
Professor Jim Hansen in the middle here is the top NASA scientist who famously alerted the US Congress to climate change in 1988.
World leaders are beginning to realize and publicly state that there is a real climate problem and we need to solve it. And yet the action inconsistent with that.
Critics of the protesters said at the time is that they should have waited, like everyone else, for their opportunity to vote in the subsequent general election. The trouble with that is that this decision, which was going to be taken before the general election, would have bound us into a particular path for decades, and therefore we couldn't wait, or they couldn't wait, until the general election to really make a difference.
We were all very nervous and we'd put a lot of our time and energy, and there were a lot of people involved in that trial, and we all knew that a win would be an amazing thing.
What's been on trial here has not been the actions of 6 Greenpeace activists, but the government's climate change and energy policy. And it's been put before a jury of 12 good people and true, and found wanting.
The guy stood up, and so much depends on just this kind of one enunciation from a mouth. Is it going to be no or go, as in not guilty or guilty? And he went no, and in that moment, it just all hell broke loose. And my mother burst into tears and said something like, my boy, which she hasn't said for many years.
And what did you say?
I think you'll probably have to edit this out, but I think I just said, holy
This verdict, we think, marks a tipping point for the climate change movement, when 12 normal people say that it is legitimate for a direct action group to shut down a coal-fired power station because of the harm that it does to the planet. Then one has to ask where exactly that leaves government energy policy.
The Greenpeace acquittal and subsequent risk of future protest is bad news for any of the power firms seeking to build new coal-fired plants.
I think I remember the feeling more than the actual event, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
What we did that day was shut down a giant power station, which was a pretty big deal. But lots of people doing little things makes just as much difference.
So I think by highlighting this issue, by effectively putting the brakes on this bad government decision, they were doing a service, in my view, which we will thank them for in the future.